Well, this is going to be a very interesting week in politics. We've got a situation with Richard Di Natale where he's fallen into an absolute trap, a trap set by Malcolm Turnbull. He's in a position with his moral crusade to have the Senate reforms where the government's true agenda is coming out to the fore, and that agenda is the Australian Building and Construction Commission. So, what happens now? Ricky Muir's come out today with a very clever tactic for his own survival, and that's to try to wedge the government on the ABCC issue. Now, the situation for him would mean he's either going to cop the Senate reforms, that means he'll lose his job in 3 years, or drag the government to the table to discuss ABCC. Great move. By discussing it, shows all the flaws. But behind all the ABCC motivation is the Greens pushing ahead with their Senate reform ideal on a moral basis, so-called moral basis, thus doing the dirty work for the government. Because in essence, Richard Di Natale is a really naive politician. Now, a lot of people are going to be pointing to Ricky Muir and saying, oh, why is he doing this? I'll tell you why he's doing it. It's a matter of survival for him. He's a bloke with a big family, he's got to feed them, it's a good job for him. If he balks, if he says no straight away to the government, rest assured he's going to be thrown out with the rest of the crossbenchers. The Senate reforms will go through. They'll hit him hard. But if he drags it out, it changes the argument completely, changes the environment completely in terms of the political discussion. It's going to be interesting to see how the Greens handle this, whether they push hard on behalf of the government and be used as a tool of the government, or they actually see the light and maybe back off. So the situation looks dire for all of the crossbenchers, no matter what happens, because they'll either face a wipeout through the Senate reforms or being tainted as sellouts by accepting the ABCC. Now, what would we do in this situation? Well, we'd put more pressure on Richard Di Natale to drop the Senate reforms, because that's the gun to the heads of the crossbenchers in this situation. The Greens have got to realise that they're doing the dirty work for the government. Richard Di Natale especially. He's being used as a tool. See, a lot of people don't realise that the ABCC just isn't about the construction industry. This is an attempt by Malcolm Turnbull to deregulate and to hurt unions across the board. First we'll get the ABCC, then we'll get a standing committee on union activity. All the while, the rights of working people across this country are going to be ameliorated. It's a prolonged campaign by the government to attack the rights of working people. Their agenda is not only to destroy the unions, as we know, but to make it easier for corporate Australia to run riot over the basic rights of working people, working men and women across this country. The Greens, well, they're using their moral crusade for Senate reform as some kind of holy grail, you could say. But ultimately what they're doing is they're helping the government attack the rights of working people. And a lot of people watching this video might say, oh, why are the TLC out for the Greens again? We're not out for the Greens. Green members are good, decent people. What we're out for is the Greens leadership. Richard Di Natale and Lee Rhiannon have done nothing but play fool to Malcolm Turnbull's agenda. They're doing the government's dirty work, and that's absolutely wrong. And the people that lose out from that are going to be Australian working men and women. There's one way that we can avoid the mess that may roll out this week in Australian politics, and that's for the Greens to pull back on their Senate reform obsession. By doing that, that allows a breather for the crossbenchers to actually drag the government to the table to discuss the other looming issue, and that's the ABCC. A bit of rational thought, a bit of consideration. Also puts Malcolm Turnbull into the position of offering the Australian people some substantial policy ideas instead of just going to a federal election that's going to be all around union bashing. It's an easy way out for Malcolm Turnbull. It also shows the Greens to be shallow in terms of their commitment to their own membership and their so-called ideals. Our advice to Richard Di Natale: pull back on the Senate reform package. Let the crossbenchers do their job, let democracy play out. What would we do different? Well, in a situation if the TLC were active in the Senate, we wouldn't dance to the tune of the Turnbull government. We would make sure that the rights of working people were upheld and that the grand plan of union bashing and union wrecking that's on the agenda of the Turnbull government wouldn't go ahead. No matter what happens by the end of this week, there are two things we know for certain. One is that the Greens will be forever remembered as the party that sold out their members. And two, Richard Di Natale will be forever remembered as the political leader who did the dirty work of Malcolm Turnbull. Now this isn't about Greens bashing. This is about holding the Greens leadership to account, because they're making deals, they're making decisions that will ultimately benefit the Turnbull government at the cost of the rights of working people. So what if the Greens don't drop their reforms? Well, Malcolm Turnbull will get what he wants. And the big losers in the situation will be the unions and working Australians. The crossbenchers have got a lot of difficult decisions to make this week. The ramifications of those decisions will be far-reaching, not only to Australian politics in the interim, but also to our democracy in the long term. Our advice to them: make your decisions on the basis of what is right for working people in this country and not what's right for short-term political expediency.